Okay, good morning, everybody. We are going to pick up from Daf Tzadik Hey Amud Beis and Yet Hashem. We're going to try to go all the way till the end of the Perek Daf Kuf Beis Amud Beis. Today's shir is being learned Leila Nishmas, Reb Shimon Ben Zelka, Zechet Tzadik V'Kodesh Levracha. Today is his yahrzeit. Okay, let's jump right into it. We're in the bottom, Tzadik Hey Amud Beis, the bottom of the Daf. Omar Rav Yehuda Yain Hanimkur Bechanus. We're around 5 lines from the bottom. Wine that's sold in the store, and the Rashbam says we're talking about Kloimer Yain Ra. So very bad wine. The halacha is, according to Rav Yehuda, Mevarchin Allah Bayrei Pri Hagafen. Rav Chizda Amar, Rav Chizda argues, says, Gabi Chamra Da'akrim Lamali. Why should you call this wine that sours to make a gofen? Rather, Zarashbam, you make a shahakol niya b'dvari. Fraktig Morn Rav Yehuda Meisvei alapas she'ifasha. You have bread that became moldy v'aliyayin shehikrim. You have wine that became sour v'al shel shavat surasai. You have food that spoiled oimer shahakol niya b'dvari. So the kasha is on Rav Yehuda. You clearly see that what on wine that sours you make a shahakol and not a gofen. Amr Azvid, Maider Rav Yehuda agrees befurtzama the mizdaven akarnasa, which means to say is the wine that's pressed and the kernels that are sold on the street corners. There, it's such bad wine. The only reason why you would drink it is for dehydration, because you're thirsty, but not as wine. Therefore, avada you make a shackle. Amalei Abai Rav Yosef, Rav Yehuda, Rav Chizda. So Abai asked Rav Yosef, we have shitas Rav Yehuda and we have shitas Rav Chizda, either a gofen or a shahakol. Mar, Kaman, Svirle, who do you whole like to make such a bracha? Amalei, Masnisi Adana. I know Mishnah, we're on Tzadik Vava Madal, Titania, Haboidik Esachavis, Leois, Mafresh, Oleh, Truma. So we're going to give a little context to what's going on over here. A person, what he would do is, he wanted to be Mafresh Truma, so he would put a barrel in the corner, and every time he'd be Mafresh, he would say, Hareni Mafresh Truma to the wine in that barrel, and then eventually it would be enough Truma, the whole barrel will be full. He'll go and take care of it. Now, what happens is, if a person's mafresh truma in a different barrel, and it ended up being really vinegar, not wine, we hold like Shitas Rabbi that holds it's 2 separate minimen, and therefore it's not considered truma. It's tevel, l'chayra. You weren't mafresh it on the same min. So what happens, what's the halacha if you pull up to the corner of the room, you check the barrel, and it's vinegar and it's not wine? So the you weren't mafresh truma. So let's see it inside. The Tanya abaydik esachavis lios mafresh alat truma v'haylech ve'achakach nimtzas chaymitz. A person checks his barrel to see if it's truma. The mice ended up being a month or 2 zakdor's bam, ended up being vinegar. So the Gemara says as follows: Kol gimel yain. First, the entire 3 days is a vadai. Mikan ve'elach suffix. So it's a little of a cryptic statement. Fraktik mar my kamer. What's it mean, Gimel Yain? Which 3 days are we talking about that it's a Vadai? And what is the Vadai? Vadai Chaimitz, Vadai Yain, we're going to see. So Amr Rabbi Yochanan Hachi Kama. This is what it's saying. Kol Gimel Yomim Hari Shoinim. The first 3 days, Vadai Yain. Mikan Ve'elach. Afterwards, it's Suffolk. Wapshat. My timer, because Chamra Mila Oyakar. Wine from the bottom, from the top, it starts spoiling. He tasted it and it was good. V'intim salam, you're going to say, let's say he started Sunday morning. So right after Sunday morning, he tasted it was good, and then right afterwards, basad the team maybe right then and there. A few minutes later, started spoiling. Since it smells like wine, it smells like vinegar, but it tastes like wine. Anything that smells like vinegar, has a lacha of chamra, and therefore you make a bayer pri hagafen according to Rabbi Yochanan. And not just a bayer pri hagafen, that's not the point. The point over there is that it has a lacha of truma. That what? That avada we say it was the good mint. That's what we're going to try to compare it to hagafen and shahakol. Rabbi Shua ben Levi argues, says, Omar, called gimel yoyim amachrayim. Let's say the last time we checked it was Sunday. Today is Friday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we say it's for sure vinegar. Mikan v'la'alon, it's only a suffix if it's tevel or not. My time, because chamra mitasoyaka. Wine starts coming spoiled from the bottom. Maybe they didn't realize. The Rashbam says it's all rabusa nakalashminon. Because Rabbi Shua ben Levi also holds of what? That it starts milayakar. The halacha is, according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Levi, it smells like vinegar even though it tastes like wine. Has a halacha of challah. So that is Shitas Rabbi Shua ben Levi. The Ramai, the people from the south, would say Masnu Mishmei de Rishon ben Levi, Rishonim Vadayayin. They said there's more packets of 3 days. There's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Then there's Thursday, Friday, Shabbos. What's with Wednesday? Rishonim Vadayayin. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We say it's for sure. Why? Achrayim, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Vadei Chaimitz. And Tzoyim, in between stages, Suffolk. Frek Gemara. How's that add up? Hagufa kasha. Amar to Rishonim. If you tell me the first day is Vadei Yayin, Amma, Elamai, Reicha, Chala, V'taimeh Chamra has the halacha, even though it smells like vinegar, has the halacha wine. But then you tell me, Ba'adas Amar, Sachrayim, Vadei Chaimitz, Amma, Elamai, the Reicha, Chala, V'taimeh Chamra has the halacha vinegar. Chala, it's a chaytz stira. On that, Dr. Gemara, Gegoin, Dishtakach, Chala sefikta, very strong vinegar, and it's so strong. And if it wasn't such strong vinegar, then it wouldn't have been possible that it was at least 3 days in the making. The Rashbam says this is dafka according to the Raimai. However, Rabbi Shua ben Levi in the second shot they bring it down in the Rashbam Inami less lechach svara. The loishna sefikta loishna chaimitz. Kol Gimel Yom Achrenim Zakter Shvam is also Suffolk according to Rab Yochanan and Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Now, Zakter Marvai, according to Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Zakter Marvai there, Kamad Pashala. So now, who do you all like? This is what the Gemara is saying, Lamaisa. This was the question. Abai asked Rabbi Yosef, who do you all like? So Pligi Ba Rab Mariv Zvit Chad Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Then we make Agafen Chad Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Okay, very good. Shmaka Machlekes. Itmar. Someone who sells wine to his friend, he gets home and it's vinegar. It's soured. If it's within 3 days of the sale, we say that what? It's in their shos of the meicher that it started spoiling, and the Rashbam is masbit, a davi yadua that it took at least 3 days to spoil. Now that it's spoiled, it really started 3 days ago. You're going to tell me the lekeach drank it. Even though you drank it, it doesn't make a difference. We say hadova yadua that b'shas mechira of reicha chala, it had the smell of vinegar, and therefore it's a bittul mekach. However, mikan ve'elach, if it's ready more than 3 days, b'shus lekeach, it's going to say it's rishus lekeach. Dahainu ha'maitzim mechaveiroi olav haraya. One tzaddik vava mebeis v'shmuel amar Shmuel argues, says chamra kasra demari shavar, which means the wine that went on the shoulders of this lekeach. What do you want from there? And there's two mahalchim that explain it. The Rashbam learns that means to say there's a concept of mazal goyrim. It's the shoulders of the lekeach that caused it. Dahainu his mazel. Taisus doesn't like it. Taisus wants to say kloimar hayayin kivan shenasav v'ksafayim niskalka adishan aneh mir lahachmitz. By you doing a lot of movement and schlepping into your house and putting it on your shoulders caused it to spoil. Avad Rav Yosef uvde kavased derab, that it depends on the 3 days or not. B'shechra dafka and beer. Kavased the Shmuel bechamra. However, with one he had like Shmuel that either it's mazal goram or like Taisus that a taka caused it. Hochas kavased halach is l'mais like Shmuel. What are the two dots of tzaddik vav and base top of the amataner abanan echad sheichet tamar? Whether you have from dates ve'echad sheichet sarim from barley ve'echad shimmer yain, doesn't make a difference. Barley beer from dates or beer from barley, you don't make a mezainis. We make a shahakol ve'echad shimmer yain. Shimmer yain is the lees we call it. It's in the bottom of the barrel. And we're going to talk much more about it, about tamed, how we make yain, mivarchan aleim, shahakol nia b'dvari. That is Tanakama. Cheir ma'imrim shmarim sheyesh b'am tan miyayin. If it tastes like wine, mivarech aleim, boyrei pri agofen. So it's a machlekes acherim and Tanakama. Rabbi Yosef Amar Tavayu ein alocha kachem. Rather you make a shahakol. Amar Rabbi the Kula Alma. Rabbi says as follows. Rabbi's mamshach. The Kula Alma Rama tlas of asar ba chamra. Which means to say is, you have these lees, we explained the arichas in the Daf Yomi, but you have these lees, you take, let's say, 3-gallon bottles and you pour it into the lees and comes out of a sprout, comes out 4 bottles. So we're saying there's at least, there was so much teichin, there was so much liquid in the lees that we say it's 25% that avada that would have a halacha of chamru, because it's good 25%. And the Gemara says, Rabbi Tamei Dam Rava says, Adarabba. Rav L'tamei, Da'amar Rav Kol Chamra D'Loidari. If you have wine, they don't even dilute achad. Tlas Maya Lav Chamaruhu. In those days, you had to dilute the water to even drink it. So you clearly see Rav's halacha that it takes at least 3 times water for 1 cup of wine. Rama Tlasa Asa Tlasa. There's no argument if you put in 3 bottles of water and it came out 3 bottles of water. But like Klumu, it's flavored. It looks like it's just food coloring, you could call it, because it looks like wine. Okay, pligi. So where's the argument? The Rama Tlasa Asa Tlasa Palgo. What happens is you put in 3 bottles, came out 3.5 bottles. How do you look at the 3.5 bottles? They're abundant. Savri Tlasa Ayot Tlasa Nafik. 3 bottles came out, 3 take out. And Pashle, you're left with what? Palgo. So it's half a bottle. Half times 3 times 2, because each bottle is 2 halves. It's 6. Upalga B'shisa. Palgi, Mayiv, like Klumu, there's no question about it. If it's only 1 and there's 6 waters against that 1 half, 6 halves of water, like Klumu. Acherim Sabi, no. Tlasa all, train, upalga nafish, palk like kuza, the kuza betray palga, chamer malyu, which means to say is that Acherim whole 3 bottles came in, but 3.5 came out as follows. You have 2.5, and then you have a whole bottle of wine. Because what happens is, it's the teva, the way it works with the shimmer yain, is that it absorbs it, and then it pulls out a whole bottle of wine. So the way we look at it is, we have 1 full bottle of wine, and we have against only 2.5. There's no shiloh, be halacha of wine. Frekti Mara, is this really true? B'yaisem ikademi dasai, mi pligi. Are they really arguing? You're telling me that the whole argument is Dafka the Mikademi Dasai Vatnan. We're going to see this at Sandik Zainam and Aleph now. Hamesamid Vinasan Mayim Bimidamada Umatsakademi Dasai Potter. We're talking about the same type of concept. Someone who makes water from the Shmarim. We're handling over here the halacha of Meiser. So if you pour the same measurement, you're Potter. Rav Yehuda holds Dafka B'Meiser. It's a Chumer the Meiser Mechayv. So the Gemara's kasha is ad kan loy pligi ele b'chademi dasai. It's only when it's what 3 bottles came in, 3 came out. Of v'yaisik gademi dasai loy pligi. Then avada, they're not going to argue that it has a halacha of Chachamim is going to say that you have a chayiv and meiser. Gemara says no. Who are they not feeling b'yaisik gademi pligi? They're still having the argument. So what's the chiddush? V'aytakamifligi b'chademi dasai to tell us even Rabbi Yehuda like diach hakoich Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yehuda is going to hold. Even in such a case, we have a chumrah meiser. You had these leash, tam yain mao, tastes like water. It's flavored water, it's nothing to it. As follows, you have these leash. If it's truma, so every time you pour it, I gave the mashal like a tea bag during the shir, right? There's a tea bag, every time you use it, eventually it gets diluted and diluted more till there's nothing left of the tea bag. Same type of concept. Rishon v'sheni, the first 2 pourings, we say has halacha truma, aser. However, v'shlishi, it's not even yayin, it's mutter. Remeir ap v'shlishi, Remeir's machm b'naisin tam. What about if it's shmarim shal meiser? Rishon aser, sheni is mutter. Remeir ap sheni b'naisin tam. So that's in regarding, we have truma, we have meiser, now we have hekdesh, shlishi aser, revi mutter, me'ayim revi naisin tam. So it's 3 separate madrigas. Frekting maro meaning we're saying shel hekdesh la'ayla maser. Here we clearly have Bryce that says it's always aser. There we said revi is mutter according to Tanakam Meir. He's going to hold even revi. Dafka b'naisin tam. V'shal meiser la'ayla mutter. It's a stira. Kasha hekdesh kasha meiser. For the Gemara is like Hekdesh like kasha kan b'kedusha as a guf. When it's kedusha as a guf, which is the second brisa, then it's always aser. Kan over here, the first brisa, where it depends if it's the second, third v'chulei, b'kedushas damim will hatch a much easier level, and that's regarding hekdesh. Meiser nami like kasha kan b'meiser vadai kan. B'meiser t'mai. The second brisa la'ila mutter is talking about t'mai, therefore would much more makel. Just like we have these halachas, depends how many times you pour it. We all know the zayin mashkim, in order to be something to be mekabel tuma, needs to touch one of the zayin mashkim. Frek the Gemara, who really cares? If it's mayim or yayin, echsherin demai, demaya, achshuri machashri, dechamra achshuri machashri. So mayim and yayin both are the zayin mashkim. So what's the chiluk? We're talking about that since the scenario is that it wanted to make shaman. What's the mile to make shaman? We learned this in Bava by Richos. Shtei kiyitain kiyutan. We have a drush over there to tell us that by mayim, in order to be machshir, you have to have machshava that you want it. So the nafkamina is make shamim. Since we make shamim, you didn't have the machshava. If it's yayin, it's not totally machshava. If it's mayin, it's totally machshava. Once we're talking about not the first pour, we're talking about the first pour, second pour, third pour. By you doing it, you're machshava like tzricha shenitmat me'elav. End up going on its own. How did you do it on its own? You're right, the first one was on its own. That's how it seeped. My answers, Amar Papa, but Parosh, Shaisa, Rishon, Rishon. We're talking about the cows. Takano Machshava drinking the first and the second. Now there's a Shaila, let's say the Shlishi. The Par did it twice. Is it Mayim or is it Yayin? If it's Yayin, L'chayra, it's not Tola Machshava. If it's Mayim, it's Tola Machshava. Amar Rav Zutra Batovya, Amar Rav. Ein oimrim kiddush hayoim ela hal yayin haroi linasach agabe izbech. These attack of practical halachas. We're going to be seeing him Yatz Hashem in the deer shoots coming up. These halachas. Ein oimrim kiddush hayoim. You don't make kiddush ela hal yayin haroi linasach agabe mizbech. It has to be roi for the nisach mizbech. What are we talking about? If we're talking about stam grape juice, you should not bring lo yevi. Heavy, it's kosher. Given they may be kosher, and nan we would hold afilu lekatchila nami. Why? Dr. Shbam de loy chamer kiddush kenisach. It's not as old as chamer. So what are we talking about? One side exayim based on Merava. Dr. Shbam. Even if you're going to tell me that they're what? You are medam the kiddush and nisach. Still, we see that what soichet adam eshkol shel navim ve'oyme all of kiddush yom and fair shalach and able to make kiddush and grape juice. Ela lemute. You're going to tell me what? Maybe mipiyah mishulehel, which means the top of the barrel and the bottom of the barrel. And Rashbam says by the top of the barrel it's very not pleasant. Mipiyah mevnei kamachim. You have these little pieces like mold and all these like flowery substance. Is not pleasant to drink. V'loy mishulel, like we all know even today, it's not pleasant to drink the bottom of a bottle because it's full of sediments. So maybe that's what we're talking about. You shouldn't make kiddush on. However, it may be kosher. Elama ute, you're going to tell me yain kushi whether black wine, a barak, or white wine. Halistoin, the Rashbam says, listoin is what? Yain masuk, very sweet. The cholosh wine is very weak wine. Or shel martif, we're talking about from a barrel, we're talking about stam yain, Dr. Shbam of a martif, that you didn't check it. And since it's very possible the barrels are sour, so maybe that's the case. However, shel tzemukim or raisins, wine from raisins. However, it's still kosher, so we're back to square one. Maybe it's coming lemute, sour wine, or mazik or diluted wine. Or magula, we're going to see uncovered wine. We all know in those days there was an issue of the nachash of poison. They'll show shmar, or of these leaves, or wine that doesn't smell good. So maybe it's coming lemute, these wines. So the Gemara breaks it down. Lemute mai, lemute kaisis. You want to tell me it's a machlekes sour, the kaisis, souring wine or not? Stop machlekes. But look, the Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi ben Levi. We already learned this earlier with Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi ben Levi. What is the halachas? It's nothing to do with kiddush. If you don't make a gafa and you make a shakal, there's no shaila of kiddush. So what are we talking about to make it? Ilamute mazik. If you're going to come tell me regarding diluted wine, but kiddush, you make it even better. That's aim of olav punk fakert. You need to dilute it. Otherwise, it's not drinkable. If you want to tell me, it's coming to tell me uncovered wine. It's nothing to do with kiddush. So what's the case of shmarim of least? We learned this earlier. It's not a shayla. Everyone holds it's good wine. You can make kiddush. That's a machlekes earlier. Yes, the daf before. If I has a lach of wine. It's coming lemute. What? Wine, the taka smells bad. And this is taka, if you look in the Mishnah Brura, they bring this, you're not supposed to make kiddush on reicha ra. That's him coming tell me uncovered wine. We asked the just a sakana. The chiddush is, even though you put in a filter, and the wine taka has no poison anymore. We have the pasuk of akrivenu no. Akrivenu no. You're going to go bring wine. You're going to go offer it to your governor. He's going to want it. What is this? We're talking about someone who brings a carbon. Let's say you bring a chayla. You bring something sick. Come on. He's not going to want it. So too over here, you shouldn't make kiddush on something that's not pleasant to bring. Chama chavorin. What about wine? White wine. Amalei altera yain ki sadim be'etzem. You should drink red wine. Why? Because it's meshaker yaiser. Alma be'etzem avada. You should have red wine. Now we said in the Mishnah, kankan kim b'shar'on. We have these barrels in chart. Tana. We have a brisa. Pita size. When we're talking about these inferior barrels, it means nice. They're good. Umegufaris means to say there's Ramas Masber that they cracked. So you fill them up with like sulfur. You fill them up with today, whether it's tar, other stuff, and you fix it up. But avada, we're not talking about broken barrels. Rather, you closed it up. In such a case, you can only accept 10. One, the Mishnah, Tzadik Zayin, Amid Beis, HaMoicher, Yayin, Lechaveiroi, Vehechmitz. Someone who sells wine to his friend, the Lamaisa, ended up being sour. Mishnah, the Reisha says, Eina Chai Becharusa. It's not my, we're going to talk about it in the Gemara, I'm not Chai V'Samoicher. V'im Yadua, however, if it's known, Sheyenoi, Machmitz, Harei Zeh, Mekach Tos. The Sefer says very clearly that if it's known that a person sells wine, then the halacha is it's a mekach tos. And the Rashbam is masber, we're talking about that what? That this person has a history every year of selling wine. However, if he tells him, I'm selling you wine that's flavorsome, then chayev lahamilo, you have to do it ad tzeres. You have to give it to him until that tzeres. However, after that, where it's Kufas Tammuz, you don't have to bring it because it's going to get, even Yaim Mevusim will get ruined. And if he says, V'yoshin, old wine, Mishel Ishtakit, he has to give it from the year prior. Umeyushon, if he says aged wine, Mishel, Gimel, Shanim, then he has to give it 3 years. And the Gemara is going to talk about till when is the third year. Zok the Gemara, Amar Rav Yosef Bechanina, Loishanu, Elo, Bekankanim, Delekeach. Zok Rav Yosef Bechanina, this whole halacha that we're saying, you're not chayiv. In the Achrayas is talking about that what? When you sold it and it went into the barrels of the Lekeach. Then, once you put it into the barrels, we could say the Kalim was Goyermit, that's why it got spoiled. Avo, Bekankanim, the Meicher. If you didn't touch it and it's still in the barrels of the Meicher, Amalei could tell him, here's your wine, take back your barrels, and l'chayra it's a mekach tos. Frak the Gemara, v'chankankanim the meicher what's your problem? L'chayra, you shouldn't have drank the wine. Zok the Gemara leitzricha da amalei lemikfa. The reason why he waited is because he told him clearly, I want it for cooking wine. Therefore, in such a case, avada, you should have known better as a meicher that I'm going to keep it for a while as cooking wine. So, frak tomorrow, my duchka der Rav Yosef Bechanina, look, milamas nisin, bekankanin delekeach. Why do we have to come on that we're talking about the barrels of lekeach? Vidalam alayla mikvah. And then we have to come at the scenario where he told him, I'm using it for extensive time. Look, easy. Bekankanim de meicher. We're talking about where he sold him the barrels of the meicher, but the layam alayla mikvah. And he didn't sell it to him, le mikvah. And therefore it's in the barrels of the meicher. Why do you have to come on to such a case? Amarava masnisen kashite. He had the problem with the sefer. Why? The Ketani says, if the person has a history, the question is why? I shouldn't have been able to keep it. The lashmamina, the amalei the mikvah, shmamina. Once he had to come on to the case of mikvah, that's in the sefer that he had to come into the case of mikvah, who are there in the ratio. By chamra, by wine, we say mazalai de mare garim. The wine, we learned this earlier, it's the mazal, the new person. Shenemar, like it says, the af ki ayayin baigid. Even the wine, baigid, it betrays the person, because gaver yar, when a person's a balgaiva, just like he himself is full of it, so too, it's going to come back and haunt him that the wine was also full of it and vinegar. Amar Amari Haimandi Yair. If a person is a balgaivo, afilu, a inchi, beise, loy makabel, even the people in his house are not going to listen to him. Shenamar, like it says, Gever Yohir v'lo yinove. My v'lo yinove, benove shaloi, even in his own house, the Rashbam says, his wife, his kids, they're going to be mavazim, they're not going to even listen to him. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, call him his goye betalish tamechacham. The ain't a tamechacham. Someone who wears, we learned this on the Nun Zayin Amid Bais. If a person wears a talis of a tamechacham, which says kol sheina nira mitacht of tefach, such a person today you wear a frak. You don't belong wearing a frak. Ei machnisin oisoi b'mechitzasoi shel hakadosh baruch hu. Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't want him. Ksiv hachav v'leinave v'ksiv hasam. It says over there el nevei kachech. Omer Rava Haiman de Zoven Lei, Chavisa de Chamre Lechanva, Adaite Lisevuye. It means to say is a person walks over to a store owner. He says, I'm going to give you wine as a shliach. Don't pay up front. I'm going to give you the wine. Sell it for $15. I really charge $10. You keep the profits. And the point is to sell it gradually. V'tokif apal goy tilsa. Lamaisa ended up souring after only he was able to sell half of it or a third of it. Dinahu de mekabel lamine. The halacha is that the meicher, the person who gave it to the shliach as the chanus, to the owner, he has to accept it back. V'loy and this is dafka deloy shani bebarza if he didn't change the sprout. Aval shani bebarza. Once the chanus, the person, the store owner who comes and changes the sprout, it's very possible he ruined. He didn't put it in the right place. Loy. Another thing is the loy mata yaima de shuka. Also, if the day of the shuk didn't come, if he was sleeping the day of the shuk and he didn't get rid of the wine, if mata yaima de shuka, you should have said, the guy could tell the balachanus, come on. You should have gone and made sure to sell all the wine. Like V'amar Rava, another halacha. Haiman de kabel chamra daita de mamti le farvasa de volshafat. What are we talking about? A person goes over to somebody, and we all know it's similar to a heter iska, which is usually heter iska is. What is an iska? I give 50% equity and 50% sweat. We're equal partners, so I give all the money, and you got to sweat. That's what it's called. You got to do it. However, mitam ribis is a management fee of $1. We went through this by Riches B'Metzia, but the point is, it's chetzi halva, chetzi pekadon. Why? Because the person, the sweat partner, is always chayiv a chrayis of 50%. That's why it turns into chetzi halva, and you would have an issue of ribis. Now, usually I'm chayiv 50%. So the Gemara as follows: if me as a equity partner, and I said, I'm making a tonight with you that you have to go to Farvasa, you have to go to the ports of the Volshafat. Why over there? There, the market was much more higher. So I said, I'm not letting you sell wine until you get there. By the time he got there, Zal ended up being very cheap. So they ended up losing a lot of money. Dinuhu de Makabele, the halacha is, since me as an equity partner made the Tanai that you can't sell it before you get to the port, therefore you're not chayiv on the 50% usually that you are chayiv. What happens when it sours? Here, the shaila is, you're right, I had it tonight, but maybe the 50% should be chayiv, because we just learned earlier, which is Rav Chia Bar Yaisi, which is the mazel. Earlier by the port has nothing to do with my mazel. You didn't let me over here, Mashenkin, where it's soured. Then you could say the mazel, the two bailim caused it. The halacha is, Rav Hiller, Rav Ashi, Kavan, Rav Kana, Amalon, Chalaloi. He says by when it sours, then he has to give it back taka all. He has to chalalai. He has to give it back only 50%. He has to accept 100% laws. Keman Karb Yosef Bechaninu doesn't hold the concept of mazolei gara. One tzadik chesam at aleph, the bottom of the two dots. Yashon mishel ashtaket. He has to give it the year prior. Tanu umiyashin, the aging wines v'haylachad has to go until which is 2 years prior, and then the year has to finish up by Sukkot. However, if it didn't get the Sukkot, you're chayiv. One side the chesam and beis, the Mishnah on the top, a meicher mokum the chaveiroi. A person says, I want to sell you a place to build. The chein kabel mokum the mechaver lasis loy. What is he going to make for him? Beis chasnus livnoi. You're going to make for his son. When they got married, they built a little house next to them. That was common. Ubeis almanus labita. If the chas shalom, if the husband died, the daughter went back to live by the parents, but they didn't want to live in the house. They lived on the side. The halacha is, and the Gemara is going to discuss why we're talking about dafka case it's a son. Boine arba amos al sheish. You have to build 4 by 6. Divrei Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Shmuel says, come on. Refez bakrizu. This is a cattle. It's a place for it's a barn. You don't put a chas and a kala at such a small place. Haroitz elasis refez bakar. The Gemara is going to say who's talking. Is it Rabbi Shmuel or Rabbi Kiva? Haroitz elasis refez bakar. So an attack wants to build a cattle, a little barn. Boine dal amos al sheish 4 by 6. Bais katan, a small house, sheish al ches 6 by 8. Gadol, a big house, ches al eser 8 by 10. Trakelin, we're going to see what that is. Yod 10 by 10. Rumai, the height, gechetzi arkoi v'chetzi rachbai. So for example, if you have 20 long, 10 wide, you have to build the height 15. Raya l'davar, the Gemara is going to say who's talking to Tanakam, it's Reb Shimon Gamliel. Raya l'davar, Reb Shimon Gamliel Aimer, kibin in a heichel, that we know, we're going to see the pasuk, how the height was half of the width and the length. Zok the Gemara, lama li l'misna beis chasnas l'vnoi, Ubeis Amanos Labita. Why do we have to talk about it? It's very interesting. If you look in the Mishnah is very clear. It's talking about what? That it was the son. Why can't it be the daughter? Especially today, we know if anything, the daughter lives near the mother. Listni, Beis Chasnus Livnoi Ulevitai, or Beis Amanusu Livnoi Ulevita. Why are we differentiating and saying, oh, when the son lives by the parents? And that's the Gemara, Milsa Agav, Orche Kamash Melinda. What? The Loi Darka wasn't the Derech, the Chasna Lebeda Bechamur, like the Gemara Psachim talks about, where Chayshet, especially the first son-in-law, and Uadin, all the other son-in-laws, you should not live near your mother. You should see if the wife is spending a lot of her husband's money on the new son-in-law. We have what to worry about. Therefore, they didn't live together. Like we know, it says B'Seif Metzira, he was a chashuv person. He wrote as follows: Hakol shakalti b'kaf maznai v'loy matzasi. I put everything on the scale. I didn't find anything kal, anything less than misubin from brand. V'kama subin, worse than subin, inferior than subin is chason. This is what we're bringing it for. Hadar bebeis chamav, someone who lives by his father and mother-in-law. V'kama chason, oyrech mechnis oyrech. Not enough that you bring yourself, you bring in another person. And what are you going to do? And more than that, it's very embarrassing. You have no choice but to accept the new Eirich. The Kam Eirich, someone who does what? Meisha Davar B'Terem Yishma. Before he even hears anything in the stance, he starts opening his mouth. Shenamar says, Meisha V'Davar B'Terem Yishma. He's a fool, v'chlima, it's embarrassment, a foolish person does such a thing. Rabbi Shmuel Leimer, it says in the Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel Leimer, Refes Bakar Yizu. And then it says, all right, so last Refes Bakar should be Baine 4/6. Zok Gemara, Refes Bakar Mank Tanila. Who's the one talking? Ikadam Rabbi Shmuel K'tanila. Ikadam Rabbi Kiva K'tanila. Ikadam Rabbi Kiva K'tanila. The Hachikam. That's what it's saying. Afal pi sherefes bakar he. Pamim shadam aisa dirase kerefes bakar. Even though it is a refes bakar, yeah, there are times a person makes his dira refes bakar. We Rabbi Shmuel K'tanila. This is what it's saying. The Hachikam. Shai writes it. The reason why it is a right. This is what he's Rabbi Shmuel's telling Kiva. Come on, 4/6. That's a refes bakar. The why? Shai writes the last is refes bakar. Isa Abrahamas al sheish. Traklin is yud. What is a traklin? My traklin, it's a kufsa varadi. It's a nice pavilion. We call it like a gazebo surrounded with beautiful roses. It's a very pleasant place to be in. Tony, we have a rice of a kanter, shtei masrei al yud base, 12/12. My kanter, tarp, it's a pandani. It's by the mansion that had a beautiful garden in the front. You even see it today, a lot of massive villas, the front or the back of the house, they have a beautiful garden. All the gvirim would sit in the back over there that the Rishban brings down. Okay. All the sarim, all the chashuve people would sit over there. State rumai kechatzi arkay, vechatzi rachbay, rai ladavar shem galil aimer kabinyan ha'echel. So frakdamar rai ladavar mank tanila. So what's the question? If we would say Reb Shimon Gamliel aimer, first Reb Shimon Gamliel, rai ladavar, then we would know shaila. It's Reb Shimon Gamliel talking the whole Mishnah. However, since it says first rai ladavar and then it says Reb Shimon Gamliel, now we have a shaila. Is it Tanakama talking, or it's Reb Shimon Gamliel sticking it? Zok the Gemara as follows. Ikadamar, Reb Shimon Gamliel K'tanila B'Hachi Kamar. Raya Ledavar. We have a Raya Minayin. Amar Reb Shimon Gamliel Akol Kabin in a Heichel, which is Tanakama talking. Ikadamar Tanakama K'tanila. Tanakama is talking. Reb Shimon Gamliel is a Tumi Kamatama. B'Hachi Kamar Le Tanakama. This is saying, Raya Minayin. Where are you coming from? Bin in a Heichel. Atu Kula Amel Kabin in a Heichel Avdi. Come on, go look around. Do people really build like the Heichel? Avadanat. So why are you bringing a rye that the height has to be half of the width and the length? Tanya. Acher Maimer. We have a sheet that's acher that say Rumai Kekay Raisav. Has to be, the length has to be like the beams. Just say Vilema Rumai Karachba. What's the chiluk? The width. The width and the beams are the same height. Ibesemen Be'esa Milave Ravach and top would get higher. So Taka ends up being a higher shear. Since there's sockets in the beams, which means again a higher shear. Chanina nafak l'karyasa. Chanina went out to the villages. Ramalei Kraidadi. They asked him that l'chayra there's a stira in the psukim. Why? Ksiv it says v'abayis shabanaha melech shloim el Hashem was shishim ama arka was 60 amas length. The esim rechba was 20 amas wide. V'shleishim ama kamasa. So very clear. 60, it's 20 length. 20, 20, 30. No problem. V'ksiv. Sorry, it was 60 length, 20 wide, which is 30 height. Then it says, regarding the Fnei Dver, Esrim Amma Dver, it was a Preichis, it's a Shaila, Amma Oyrch, the Esrim Amma Racha, the Esrim Amma Kamasa. Here it says, Esrim Amma Kamasa. The other pasuk says very clearly, Shlayishim Amma Kamasa. So what is going on? Amar Lahu, on that, Reb Chanina answers, Ki kachashiv misfas keruvim v'lamala. Since there was a keruvim, which we're going to see in a moment in the next daf, it was what? It was 10 amas high. We're counting, we're saying the 20 amas is from the keruvim atop. Frek Demar, my kamash malon. What's the kamash malon? Why do you have to say it like this? Just say it was 30 amas high. Ha-kamash malon, one tzadik tasam at aleph, that what? Lemata kilamalo. Malamalo. Just like you understand that what? The 20 amas above the keruvim ain't mishamish klum. It's not taking any space because it's airspace. Af lamata. Who is in the keruvim ain't mishamish klum. Misayeh leila Reb Levi, Damer Reb Levi, V'temer Reb Yochanan, Davas Emes Hayes B'Yadeinu Avasenu, that what? Makama Oren. Now the Oren we know is 2.5 amas. We learned this by Riches in the first parak. Rekruvim ain't in the It's not part of the measurement. Tanena mehachi, because it says Oren, Shasa Maisha, Yesh loy revach esa amas l'chol ruach v'ruach. It says it has 20 amas. How could that be? 10 by 10 is 20. L'chayr, if you count the Oren, it should be 17 and a half. Elamai was a nace. Now we didn't count it in the measurements. Omar, Ravinoyam Shmuel Keruvim, B'nei Seinoimdim. They would stand in the miracle Shenemar, like it says, V'chomesh Amos Kenaf Akruva Echos. V'chomesh Amos Kenaf Akruva Sheinis. Eser Amos Mixois Knofov. Ve'ad Ksois Knofov. So we're saying very clearly it was 10 Amos. For the more Gufaya, what about their bodies of the Keruvim? Very nice, we're counting their wings. What happened to the body? Now we're going to have multiple questions that l'chara shouldn't be a raya that it was an ace, and the Gemara is not going to answer it, and we're going to continue with the different subjects. So let's see it. Maskif lo abayo. Today it's some gedaya. A lot of people are going to do kaparas today. We take the chickens, you look at the chickens, the wings are on top of the body. So why can that be like the wings are on top? Therefore, the body's under, and that's why you don't count the measurement. Maskif rava. Maybe they weren't exactly touching, they were overlapping avakayami. Which means they're going on diagonal, which is much more than 10 amas. That's why there's plenty of room. Like we learned earlier that the wings were on top, therefore it was a little higher. Maybe they're what? Maybe there was slightly bent their wings. Maybe the yadayu. Maybe their hands were crossed like a person, and therefore there's plenty of room. Maisa, we don't give terutzim to all these type of scenarios. How did the keruvim stand? Keitzad heinoindim. Rabbi Yochanan Elazar Amar Penayim Ishal Achib. The keruvim would face each other like a chasen and kala. V'chad Amar Penayim labayis towards the house. V'lamanda Amar Pneim ishal ochiv, haksev upneim labayis. We have two psukim. One says towards each other, and one says labayis. Like kasha. Kan bisman sheisrael oisin ritzon shamakim. So they faced each other. Chipa to shows the Rebbeinu Shalom's happy with us. Kan when it faced the bayis, bisman shein Yisrael oisin ritzon shamakim. V'laman da'amar ufneim labayis haksev upneim ishal ochiv. And there you can't tell me it's toler ritzon shamakim, because why lekatchila when you do it to labayis? Lekatchila should do it to them. Mar answers the mitzvah studi was a little on a turn. The Tanya uncle Sagerai Mekruvim was ma'asit satsume. They were formed like children with sudadne penayim ketaman and iftam rabbi. That when a person leaves his rabbi, he doesn't completely back up because he'll hit a pole, but he doesn't want to put his back towards his rabbi, so he goes in an angle and he passes. So to the Kruvim were on in between the bias and each other. We're at the Mishnah Tzadik Tasam and Aleph. A person has a pit in his friend's house. Either the Zakter Ishbam with a chalukah, or Shalachim Alabai bias, and he also got the derech. So the point is, you have a bar. The halach is nichnas b'shah shebderech b'nei adam nichnasim. You could go during the day. You don't expect me to wake me up and bang on my door at 2 o'clock in the morning to get it. V'yaitze b'shah shebderech b'nei adam yaitze. Again, you also leave at that time. You don't bring your animal to drink from the bar. Ella, you take a bucket. You take a bucket, fill it up with water, and you feed your animal, drink him out, and you give him to drink outside. The say for the Mishnah, so they're going to both make a lock. We're going to see it's the balabayas and the balabar. We're going to see where the lock is. It's on the bar, and we're going to see why they both need a lock, which the Gemara jumps right away into. Where are we putting this lock? So if you look at a bar, picture like a bar with a cover, and on the cover there's 2 locks. One belongs to the Baal Bayis, and one belongs to who? to the balabar. So Bishlam balabar we can understand. He wants to watch and make sure that the balbayis doesn't come and take water from him. Ela balabayis lamale. Why does the balbas l'char need to put a lock on Yenim's bar? Amar Belezer, Mishum, Chashad, Ishtai. The reason is that we want it to be that the lock belongs to the Baal Habayis, and if the Baal Habar comes to the house, he's going to have to get the husband to come in, because we're worried that people are going to say, oh, maybe they're doing znus because he keeps on coming into this Isha's house when she's not home. So Kapshuti, you have to understand that the key needs to be in the hands of the husband. Kapshuta, that's the whole purpose. However, Zakter Shbam, V'gneva, we're not worried because the wife is there. Isha Mishameres is a bias. We are on Tzadik Tesam Beis, the first line by the Mishnah on top. Mi sheyesh loy gino lifnim miginosu shechaveiroi. You have a person who has a garden, very similar to the bar, in interior garden of his friends. Nichna same malacha. Again, it was also Yarshim Zakter Shbam or Shutfin. And they're happy, and he gets a derech. So nichnas b'shashe derech b'nei adam nichnasim, v'yaitze b'shashe derech b'nei adam yaitzim. However, v'einoi machnis l'seichet hagerim. You can come and bring in your all your merchants to buy the produce. Rather, you take the produce and show them outside, very similar to the bar. You're never allowed to use this derech, not for the purpose of the sada that you're going to, rather for a different sada. Who plants it? We learned this extensively. We brought this Mishnah. The person on the outside, he has the schos. It's his derech. And the Dr. Ashbam, Hanad Sadi deloy machalei derech mikol v'kol. Rather, Vada, it's yours to plant. Let's say they had a pshara, they went to Bezdin, and they said, you know what? Make one on the side. Then he has much more privileges. Midashne said, Nichnos b'shasha yoritz. V'yaitze b'shasha yoritz. U'machnis l'seichet hager. However, one halacha is you can never use it not for its purpose. V'lo yikanis m'seichel l'seich sada acheres. And here's a chiddush. V'zeh ein rishayim l'zayir. Why? Zokter Ashban, the kimin the minatzati legamre yichadu lehelach greda. The whole purpose is what? As a pathway. Therefore, no one could plant any seeds of that. Zok the Gemara, Amr Yehuda Mishmuel. A person says he wants to sell him irrigation channel. I'm a beis hashachan in the mechalach. The halach is noisel a beis amas l'seicha v'amekan v'amekan. So he ends up giving him he's giving him 2 amas for the canal, and then he has to give it each side on the banks. He has to give him an amma for each side. What happens? He says amma beis hakiloin. I'm selling like a pond, which is just, for animals to drink. V'chulei. The halacha is lahashkes behemos to rechitzes b'gadim v'kelim. It's not so big. Then he gives them nice la'ama achas l'seicha v'chetzi amikan la'akfei. He only ends up giving him 2 amas. V'oisen akafai mizayir. Who has the schus to plant on these banks? Rav Yehuda Mishmuel Baal Asada Zer. Yehuda holds that what the name of Shmuel, that the Baal Asada has his chus. Rav Nachman Shmuel Baal Asada Noitam. Wow, you can even plant. Mandam is Zayer and put in seeds. Kolshkei Noitam. Why? Zokter Ishbam. Because when you put in seeds, the shirashim go down and they're not mazik the banks, but seeds. That's by roots. But Mashenkein Zraim, it goes all over the sides. So Mandamar Noitam. Mandam and Zayram, Kolshkein, you could plant trees because it goes straight down. Because it's going to end up going all into the things and collapse the ground. What happens? The banks fell. He has to replace it to give him the soil from that field. Because we know ended up going from that side. Masker Papa Valay, why can he tell him? Why can this Baal Asada tell him? The water came and took your soil and got rid of it very far away. Elamar Papa Shaminas Kain Kibel Allah Baal Asada. That was what you were makabel. That even in a scenario where the water comes and takes the soils away, you're going to replace it. Zok the Mishnah Tzadik Tesam Beis Mi Shahaisa Derech Harabim Iveres Elisaich Sadeyu. Someone who had a derech harabim, smack in the middle of his field, we're going to see. Not love and nasalam and atzad. He went and he blocked it over the gate and he decided he'll give them from the side. Mashanasa nasan. Whatever you gave on the side is gone. The hainu belongs to the rabbin. Vishaloi, the middle one, mashanasa nasan, vishaloi layigia. You end up with nothing. It ends up in the shus rabbin with 2 drachim. The Gemara is going to talk about barichis. Derech hayachid is dalad amas. Derech harabim is sheshes haramas. What about derech hamelech? Hamelech ein l'shir, like we're going to see in the Gemara, he could be pirates, gedarim, he can do anything he needs. Derech hakever ein l'shir, so too in a rabbim, they're going as a Levi, we're going to see if it covered a mace, they also don't have a shir, they could overflow everything. Ha-maimit, we're going to see is after the kvur, they do a maimit. Dayanit sipayir amru, base, arba, kavin, the measurement you get is what? Is 4 kavin. Frak the Gemara. Hamai, shaloi lo yigiyoi. Why is he not getting his? The one he gave, Linkoid Pazo, let him take a stick, a makol, relace him and sit there. Shamis mina, lo yavan inish, didn't let him share, feel the makam seda. L'chayr would come out that a person, Sigmar and Baba Kama that talks about it, and the Rashbam says, Shmamina de lo yavan bit miya. We paskin and Baba Kama, everyone holds, Alvid inish, didn't let him share, in a scenario where there's a hefset, the only way to do it is resorting to your own hands, taking care of it, you're allowed to do it. L'chayr over here, even in makam hefset, you should be able to stand there and block your entrance. Amar Azvid Mishmei de Rava, Gzeira, Shema, Yitin Lahen, Derech El Kalson. We're worried, it's a Gzeira. We're worried if we're going to let such a thing, you're going to take advantage of the Rabbim. The what? Since the Rabbim, a person doesn't know, there's no one who could complain, so it's a Gzeira, Shema, Yitin Lahen, Derech El Kalson that a person might give. A Derech El Kalson, therefore we set such a halacha. Rav Mishar Shab Mishmei de Rava Amar. No. Benoitzel lehen derech al kalson. We're talking about that he taka gave a derech al kalson. Only in such a case do we say that what? That we take away both of you and we can ask you. Now we're on Kuf Amar Aleph, top of the Amid. Rav Ashi Amar Kol min atzad derech al kalson. Every time when you give it from the side, you're really ruining it for somebody else. Why? Krayv elazeh, v'rechayk elazeh. You're not adding up. Because, again, we have to say we're talking about a case where you were smack in the middle. So now that you're in the middle, the people on the right and the people on the left both had even. So now you pushing into one direction, by default, you're making someone have to go much further. V'leim elahu, so frekting mara, shaklu ditchu, the havalu didi, so give me mine back. Why should I lose the one on the side? I got it, I made a mistake, but let me get mine back. Hamani, Rebbe Lezi, the Tanya, Rebbe Yudayim, Mishum, Rebbe Lezer, Rabbim, Sheberu derech la'atzma ma sheberu beru, which means to say is that if a person went and a rabbin decided on a property, ma sheberu beru. The Rebbe Lezer, frektamar Rebbe Lezer, rabbim gazlanim ninu. You're telling me that rabbim are considered gazlanim? You can't just walk over and be vira property that belongs to you. We're talking about that what? That they used to have a path in the Sada, and again ended up, for whatever reason, getting lost, and no one knew the path. So the halacha is, a rabbim is allowed to go, they don't have to go to Bezdin, because no one's going to take them to Bezdin. There's no accountability in a rabbim. So what do? They go and via the path themselves. Ravuna says that what? The halacha is not like Rebbe Lezer. Why not? What's wrong? We're talking about a scenario where they used to have a derech. It's not like such a chiddush. Why can't it be? So man the masniha, like masniha. What Rav Gidel is talking about when he says in the name of Rav, that we're talking about Avda, he didn't learn this halacha. That's why they said ain't halacha kerbelez. Frakting Mara, v'taima mai. The Rashbam says, Rav Huna, what's takab shat? Since he says ain't halacha le'svirle. So what does he hold? On that, Dr. Marmishum, the Yehuda Merav, Dami with the Rav, Meitzar, Sheikh Zika by Rabbim, Osila Kalkuloi. That once you have a Meitzar, the Rabbim was Machzer, can be Makalkuloi. Fraktim Mara, Rabbi Rabbim, Memai Konolei. What would they kind it? Bilucha. Memai Konolei, what were you kind it? My answer is Bilucha by walking. The Tanya Halachba, La Arkul Rachba. The guy walks in its length of it. Konamakim Lucha, the Rabbi Lezer. The Chachami Maimer, Ein Hilach Mailach Aklum, Achi Achsik, you have to do Chazaka. Amar Lezer, my time of the Frektim Mara, Amar Lezer, my time of the Rabbi Lezer, the Chsiv. We're Pshat of Rabbi Lezer, because he's coming from a pasuk. It says, regarding Avram, Kum Esalach Ba'aretz, La'arkul Rachba, Kilachat Neno. That's why you see that you can be kind. Rabbanan, what's Rabbanan going to do with this pasuk? Hasam, Mishum, Chavivusa, Davram, Hu, Dekamerle. He's doing it to show us that what? That the Shatan shouldn't be Mikatrig later on when he was Chavish. Hachi Kedeshe Nayach, Lichvaish, Lifnei, Vanav. Amir Rabbi Yosef Bechanina, Maidim, Chachomer, Lebelazer, Beshvil, Shel Kramim. That what? Hoyul, Venase, Lihiluch, Nikne, Bihiluch. Since the whole purpose is To do hiluch by a shvil, that's how you kind it. Go give them enough of a load of branches, that they're able to spin around. Ellen the Messiah mechitzos, you have walls. That's how much you need to space. But if there is no mechitzos, kihechi the shokol kaira menach kaira, enough to basically, literally for your steps. That's how much you have to give. You don't have to give such a big measurement. We said derech hayachad dalad amas. Tana achem oimrim kadesh yava chamar b'masai. Enough for a donkey full of stuff. Amar Buna Allah is kacher. V'tani dachtani agayla imrim shnei gamadim umechsek. What is gamadim? Amis ktanim, some say it's amis shleimus, ein rishbam. Frek demara. Vam Ravuna alocha gedayni gaila. Vam Ravuna alocha kacher. What's going on? Is the alocha kacher gedayni gaila? My answer is idi v'idi, chada, shiuru. The both are saying alocha is rav, because they're both saying taka the same shir. Derech harabim sheishes amma. Taner abanon, one of the two dots, kufam and aleph. Derech hayochid is arba amis. Derech meir le'ir, shmoin amis. From a city, Zokter Ashbam, you need to have it both ways. Two-way traffic, therefore it's double Shmai Namas. Derech Harabim is Sheshis Amas. Derech Ari Miklot is how much? You need to be much more bigger in order for the people to run. They need to run. Shleishim Eshtayim Amas needs to be 32 Amas. Amar Avuna Maikra, from where we come, we see in the Pasuk Siv, Tachilcha HaDerech, we're learning from the extra, hey, Derech HaDerech, to tell us there should be double, instead of 16, it's 32. One Kufam and Beis, the two dots, Derech HaMelech, Ein loy shir. Why not? Shahamelech, pirates, geder, lasus loy derech. Ve'ein mimachem biyad, we're not moiche. Derech hakever, ein loy shir. Why? Mishum yikar the shechbol ma'is of a covered mace. We do that. Hamaimid. We said the yani tzipayram rubei bas dalat kavi make it 4 kav. Toner abanon hamoiche kivroi derech kivroi. A person went and he sold his derech kivroi makam amadu basis peidai. The halach is after buying b'min yishachav v'koyvin aisal karchai. Why? He sold it mishum gam mishbacha. Because of gam, it's a gnai. However, Zakter Shbam, there's no shayla about it. You got to give back the rest of the money because he's the guy paid. Taner abanon ein peichsesin mishiva ma'amadois. Umayshavais, Lameis, Keneged, we do Shiva Mamadais, Umayshavis. When they're at the mace, even today by Levayos, I think they do Yeshiv Seis Elyon like 7 times. They stop, they say Yeshiv 7 times. Keneged, Havel, Avolim. So Havel is 1, but the Avolim, every time it's plural, we learn 2 from it. So Havel, Havolim 2 and 3, Amar Kaelis, Havel is 4, Havolim 5 and 6, Hakol Havel, we see 7 times. Amar Bachabe, the Rabbi Larvashi, Hechi Avdi. Amalek, the Tanya, review the Yehuda Rishaina, La Yapaichs, Shiva Mamadis, they wouldn't do less than 7 Mamadis and Meshavis Lames. Okay, going, the Yakarim, I do the deer stand, Shvu Yakarim, Shvu. Sit down. The deer one sit down. Amru, however, the Cholkim said in law, Im Kain, if this is taka true, Apa Shabbos Mutalasis Kain, what's the problem with doing such a thing on Shabbos? Ach say, the sister, the Rambam Papav, and the Sivir of Avya. He was married to Avya, and Shechiva, she died. So Avila, Avya went and did a Ma'imid U'Maisha. Amar Avya, he said, Ta b'tayt, he made a mistake in 2 things. Ta, first of all, Shein Eisen Ela B'Kravim. He used to do this, Vu Avad, even Rav Avya would do it at Fila B'Chaikim. V'ta, Shein Eisen Ela B'Yam Rishon. Dafka the day for Vu Avad B'Yam. Shein Yabay Amar B'Hana Mita, why? Shein Eisen Ela B'Beis HaKvaros, Vu Asa Be'er. You only do it in the Beis HaKvaros, and he would do it Be'er. Okay, Rav Amar B'Hana Mita, Shein Eisen Ela B'Makim Shenagu. V'hasam over there wasn't the minig. Loinag. Frakta Mara, Meisve, Amr Loi, Im Kain. At Shabbos it should be Mutalas Kain. The Amr say, tell me Beis HaKvaros will be Aleph. Beis HaKvaros b'Shabbos, my boy. What are we talking about? How could you ever bury on Shabbos? Mar says, Be'ir hasmuchel Beis HaKvaros. We're talking about Enechanami. A city that was samach to Beis HaKvaros, Dam Tuyi ben Hashmashos, ended up being ben Hashmashos, and they had no choice but to bury. One, the Kuf of Beis, the mission on the bottom, Amaycher, Makoim, Lechaveroi, Lasus, Lekever. We're going to see it was people, what they did was, they sold a massive cave that we're going to see is full of Kvarim. Today they have in Sanhedrin, they have you see it, the history, even 70 Kvarim. But we're going to talk about Barichas, how they built these caves. So we have this, it's quite a complex. We're going to see it's going to be really Tanakama, two of these compartments. Some hold 4, and you have a chutz in between. So a meicher makom lechaver lasus lekever. We're talking about a family mishpacha to get buried. V'chein hamekabel mechaver lasus lekever, or a contract that agrees to build such a thing. So Isa seichel shema'ara Dalad Amas El Sheish. He has to make, according to Shittas Tanakama, he has to make a room of 4 by 6. Dalad Amas El Sheish. Upesech L'Seicha, and he puts in it Shmeina Kuchen. 8 beds, enough, mitas enough to put in the mitas. Shalosh Mikan, 3 on the right, so 1, 2, 3. V'shalosh Mikan, let's say we're facing this little room. 3 on the left, so it's 6. V'shnai Mikanegdon, and 2 directly facing you, so it's 8. The Koichin Arkan Arba Amas. How deep did you have to put the mito? Was Dalad Amas, even though there's Zaktar Ishbam, it's only really the Mesa's Arka Shalosh Amas. Because of the Aron, you needed to have 4 Amas. Koichin Arkan Arba Amas. V'Raimon Sheva. Its height was what? 7 Tvachim. V'Rachban Shisha. So it's 6 Tvachim wide. 1 Kuf Aleph Amid Aleph to top of them. This is Shitas Tanakama. Reb Shimon Aimer Oises Seicha Shomara Sheish Amas Al Shmeina. Shimon Shita is that what? You did 6 by 8. Ufeisech L'Seicha Shloisha Asakoich. You did 13, not 8. So Arba Mikan, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the right, let's say. V'Arba Mikan, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the left. V'Shloisha Mikanegdon. You do 3 directly, so you're only holding by 11. Where do you have the 13? Ve'echad miyamin ha'pesach, 1 on the right, ve'echad mismol. We're going to talk about exactly where it is. Those 2 is going to be an issue, how we're going to put those 2 regarding making sure that they don't overlap other kfar. Now, va'aisa chatz al piyam ha'ara. Zak the Mishnah, we're going to all the shittas. You make a chatz in the middle. So you really built 2 of these compartments. Va'aisa chatz al piyam ha'ara, you had a chatz in the middle. If you look at the diagram, the Dirsh, and the Oizah that brings it in, you had a chatz of vav vav. And then, Sheish al sheish, Kimloya mita v'kavrao, Pesech l'secha shtei maris, 1 on the right, Achas mikan, v'achas mikan. That's Shitas Tanakama. Reb Shimon Aimer, Arba la'abru chesel. According to Reb Shimon, you'd have 52 kvarim l'chayr. 13 each one, and you made 4 of them. 4 by 4 times 13 is 52. Reb Shimon Gamliel Aimer, hakol fiyasela. Depends. If it's good rocks, it's strong rocks, you have to look at the earth. You have to hire an engineer and see how many kvarim could I do without the whole thing collapsing. Zok Shimon Gamliel depends on the measurement, how much would you do it. Zok Gemara, right away. Hani trey lehecha shadilu. Where do we put these 2 things? We had, according to Reb Chia, we're very clear, according to Reb Shimon, you had another 2. The one on the right, we said there was 11, plus another 2, 1 on each side. Where do we put it? If you put it towards the outside, the people are going to be standing during the Levaya, and they're going to be trampling on bodies. V'suha, Tanan, where the Mishnah says, Chatzer hakever, I'm a besaycha, it's tar. How could he be tar? L'chayr, you're standing on top of a grave. You make it like a bolt. How do we lock a door? If you look at the doors, right? Go straight down. So we're thinking that you put the mace directly downwards. So you're standing vertical dead. This, you're telling me. That's what you do when you want to bury animals. You just throw them in a pit. You're going to bury a mace like that? So Rabbi Yochanan gives a teretz. Rabbi Yochanan gives a halach da'avalu bekeren zavas. You put them in the corners. What happened was, you're telling me, we had each mita was an amma, and between every mita was another amma. However, right near the walls, you only had to put a chetzi amma. So the question is, if you're putting only a chetzi amma on the 2 sides of the wall, chetzi amma over here, chetzi amma over here, or in the side you want to put in a mace, l'chayra, it's going to overlap the other mitas. You put them deeper, on a lower level. If you're not going to say that, how do you have all Reb Shimon's mahalchim of 52 kvarim? By default, they're so close to each other, they're going to touch. Ella, he held, you do them different levels. Now, Rav Huna Bar Yishua is going to give a different mahalch to answer this possibility. In Amar, he made them like a palm tree. So he made them very spread out, all the bodies. So it's more like on a diagonal type of level. Fraktimara. We know Barusi, it's a mistake. Barusi is a lashon that he's an outside view. We don't hold like him. Why? Because mechti. Let's go through it. Kol amsa berivua, every square amma, amsa betrei chumshi, it's really 1.4. If you know, it's like geometry. 1a plus b equals c. So when you go diagonal, it's going to be slightly hard. It's going to come out being 1.4. Belchsanoi, kama havalu. So you're telling me, if you go diagonal, how much you're going to have? Chatz, roi v'chumshin, kuchen hava havyu. Which means to say you're going to end up with 1, and 1 fits, v'chumsha, kuchen, kama havu. How many people are buried? Tmanya. How in the world can you put 8 mason, which each one was an amma, plus you need a hefsek in between the mitas, in such a small measurement, barusahi, it's takatsev, you, and it doesn't stem. The Ibasema Kadar Amar of Shisha, we're going to see in Kuf Beis Amud Beis. Benefili, we're talking about Nefili, which means miscarriages, so it's much more smaller kfar. Machanami, we're talking about Nefili. That's why it stems that they're not hitting each other's kfar. Tanan Hasam. Now we're going to learn regarding a person that finds a graveyard. There's halachas as follows. Let's give a little context, a little agdama regarding the halachas of a mace. A person finds a mace. So if it's mushkav kedarka, which means he's a yid, that he's laid flat with his arms crossed, we know he's a yid. The halacha is that if it's a makom where he was supposed to be buried, you're not allowed to remove it. However, if it's temporary, that's why he was only buried there because he was, we wanted to bring him somewhere else, so we were in a rush, it was Benish Mashas, so Shabbos. What you do is, you could take him out, and you have to take the soil underneath him. If he's a guy, also you could just take him. That's why it says Mushkav Kedarki, he's buried like a yid. If he was killed there, if he was murdered, you see the way he's buried, just dropped dead with a bullet in his head, or he had a heart attack, he's not really buried there. Again, the halach is he able to take him. So now we're going to discuss what happens when a person finds a body, and he's Mushkav Kedarka. So a Maitze Mace, Mushkav Kedarka, the halach is nightly, he's able to take him. Ve'ast Fusasai. Why? Why are you allowed to take the soil underneath? Because we don't say it was a graveyard, because there's only one body there. No one just gets buried in a random place. However, Shnayim, if you even find two bodies, nightly invest Fusasan. We don't say it's a grave, a family graveyard. Now on Kuf Beis Amud Aleph. Matzah Shleisha. However, if you find 3 bodies, and they're mushkav kedarka with sitting each other, it depends. Im yesh beineyen me'arbat shmoina reiz schunas kvarois. If they're in between the space of 4 to 8 amos, and we say that what? It's taka family graveyard, it's shchuna kvarois. Ubaidik mimena, because you found these bodies, you have to continue checking. Baidik mena v'lalon esrim amos. So it's very crucial to understand this number of 20 amos. Now let's just give a little context. We had in the Mishnah different shiurim. We had in the Mishnah 6 by 8, Reb Shimon Shita, and then 6 by 6 and 6 by 8. 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 6 is 22, according to Reb Shimon, right? So you have 8 by 6, 8 amos. Then you have 6, and then another 8, because the chutz are in between of the 2 kvaris. That's Reb Shimon Shita. Now, Rabbana Shita is, you have l'chayra, 6 by 6, 6 by 6, 6 by 6 is how much? 18. 4 by 6, sorry. The Rabbana Shita is 4 by 6. So it ends up coming out either way, either 18 or 22. Here we're saying 20 amos, and the Gemara is going to question this. How could it be that you only have to check, if you find the mace over here, 20 amos? Zok the Gemara zay. Baidik v'mena v'lalon esrim amos. Matzah echa b'soif esrim amos. You find another one 20 amos, you have to continue. Baidik v'mena v'lalon chaf amos. Shiraglayim l'davar. She'ilu mitchilim atzay night levestu. Sasai, therefore you have to continue checking. Now, Amamar, what do we say? Ma'arba v'achmoina. This one clearly says, im yesh beineim 4 by 8. Ma'arba v'achmoina. Mani, let's go through it. Here, Rabbanan Ami Dawud Amos Al Shei said what? 4 by 6. There is no measurement of 4 by 8. Rab Shimon Amos Shei Shal Shmeina. Either 6 by 8 or 4 by 6. So tomorrow, La'aylam Rab Shimoni. Na'itanu, the Tanu, we find this Matzah Ritzufin. If a person finds a bunch of bodies squeezed in each other, Ve'ein Beineyen Midawud Amos Eidches. There is no 4 by 6. Yesh Len Tfusa. You have the lucky able to take the ground underneath. Ein Lam Shchunas Kvaris. However, we look at the bodies in the middle like they're out. And therefore we say it's a shchunas kvaris. So for Gemara, what do they say? 20 amos. For Gemara, how could that work? Reb Shimon, if it's Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says it's 6 by 8, 6 by 6, 6 by 8, which is 8 plus 6 plus 8 is 22. Rabbanon, you're back to square one. 4 by 6 and 6 and 4 by 6 and 4 by 6. What's going on? Or 6 by 6 and 4 by 6. Tamni Srei Avion. You're back to 18. L'chayra, there is no measurement of going 20. Then why do you have another 2? We're extra 2. It says 20, not 18. Okay, going to Badak, you check one of the kvarim, Scheiner, diagonal, which is extra 2 amos. It's really a little less, but we're saying it's 7 and change. We're going to a higher number of 8. Very nice. Let's say you check the caver on the left side on a diagonal. Hanami Balchsaina. Why don't you check the other caver, go through the chutz, and go to the other caver also on a diagonal? And the reason why you check on a diagonal is because some bodies are smaller than others, right? Not everyone has perfect measurements. So when you go on a diagonal, you chop right through. If so, Eser V'Tartinavi, it's 22. So Mar answers, Chad, we only do with one. It's more than enough as a chumrah to only go through one. Now on, Kuf Beis, Amud Beis. Rav Shish buried David Amar L'Olam, Rav Shimoni. You're 22, you're missing 2. One of the Kvaram is Benefili, it's only less measurements of 2 amas less. For tomorrow, but the Hamnefila, why don't we say the other one? Hanamenefili? Nah. And therefore you would beat Tamnis Rehavin, because you'd be knocking down another 2, which would make it down to 18. My answer is Chad Menefei Lamrina, tied to Menefei Lamrina. So Gemara, we have a steer of a Rami Derbanan Derbanan, Rami Derbashem and Shemin. The Tani, we learned this. Kerem and Atua, what happens to the halachas of Kerem? Hapachas Marbamas, Rav Shimon ain't a Kerem. You look at them, it's not a Kerem. It's missing. Hachamayim raise a Kerem, but Raim and Sign Kilaina. So Kasha Derbanan Derbanan, the Kasha to Shimon and Shemin. So Mefersh steer, it's opposite Shittis. Over here by the Kever, when it's Ritzufin, what is the halachas of Shimon over here when it's Ritzufin? Rain and some Sign Kilaina. And by Kerem, he says, Punk for Kerem. And the it's a steer of Shimon and Rabban. And that's Akdemara, Kasha Derbanan Derbanan, Kadav Shimon and Shimon. So Akdemara, no. Derb Shimon and Derb Shimon like Kasha. Hasam, loy not the inchi. When you want to plant a Kerem, I died to laker. A person doesn't do it to uproot it. Hachna, we're talking about Ritzufin, you know why? Zimnin, the Misram Lobein Shmashas. Umin Krimanachli, had no choice but to quickly bury it, therefore, right as I'm trying, Kilu Einam. Derbanan Derbanan, Nami like Kasha. Hacha, Kim the Menavel. Like Nikri Kever, you can't consider this a Kever. Therefore, none of the bodies have a loch of kever. Hasa meima amar, he says to himself, Haimin either shopper, like shopper, let's say, let me plant. It's not going to be 100% everything growing. So what I should do is let me plant everything. Whatever doesn't grow good, I'll take it out for firewood. That's why we say, Royin, Sayim Tzoyin, Kileinam, Hadron Aloch, Hamayche Peiros, Hadron Aloch, and Yetz Hashem. Next week, we're going to pick up the beginning of Perek Bais Kor.